When Cancer hears the words, "I love you," but does not feel them in the depths of the heart, a sacred inner veil is torn. It is not merely a disappointment. It is a cosmic tremor within the waters of their soul. Governed by the moon, Cancer does not perceive love through logic or surface-level declarations. For Cancer, love must echo like a tide through the emotional body, reverberating through memory, sensation, and unspoken energy. A love that does not awaken warmth in their chest, that does not wrap around their spirit like a protective ocean current, feels to them like an eclipse in the night sky, beautiful in appearance, but hiding the very light they need to breathe. This sign is not seduced by empty syllables, no matter how poetic. Cancer is ruled by intuition, and when words are spoken without emotional substance, their inner compass revolts. The crab carries its home within, and with it, a sacred sensor tuned to the vibrations of sincerity. If the energy behind those 3 words does not match the frequency of emotional truth, the message disintegrates before it ever reaches the core. Cancer may smile, may remain silent, may even whisper back what is expected, but inside, their ocean pulls away from the shore, retreating into a private sanctum where the heart heals, processes, and decides who truly deserves entrance. The Cancerian soul is not a battlefield of fleeting passions, but a temple built on emotional authenticity. When they hear "I love you" and do not feel its heartbeat behind the words, they are not just disappointed. They are wounded at the soul level. Because for Cancer, love is not just affection. It is nourishment, it is protection, it is belonging. They long to feel loved the way the moon longs for the earth, to be held in orbit not by gravity, but by sacred pull. If that force is absent, they drift, not out of weakness, but out of a primal instinct to protect their sanctuary. They do not cling to illusions. They cling to truth. And truth, for them, is always felt, never spoken. Cancer has the extraordinary capacity to love beyond reason, to forgive the storms of others, to cradle the wounded, to pour light into the shadows. But their gift is also their curse. They feel what others hide. They detect the tremors beneath still words. They see the dissonance between lips and eyes. So when they hear "I love you" and do not feel safe in its presence, they begin to armor their soft inner self with an unbreakable will, not out of vengeance, but out of sacred necessity. The heart of Cancer is not a place for spectators. It is a home, a sacred hearth, a temple of emotion where only the brave and true may enter. In this silent recognition, Cancer begins to awaken their ancestral strength. They become more than the nurturer. They become the sentinel of their own soul, the guardian of their sacred waters. This is the moment they shed the illusion that words are enough. This is when they remember that real love does not announce itself. It is felt in the way someone returns again and again, in the way they listen to silences, in the way they stay when the tides are turbulent. Cancer rises from false declarations, not bitter, but initiated. They are no longer waiting to be told they are loved. They become the embodiment of love itself. Their loyalty is no longer offered like a gift to the unworthy. It becomes a crown for the worthy to earn. And once this transformation has occurred, Cancer does not dwell in mourning. They rebuild. They return to the sea within, to the moonlit tides that make them divine. They may grieve the gap between words and truth, but they do not drown in it. Because the soul of Cancer is older than betrayal, older than deception, older than this life. Their strength is lunar, cyclical, immortal. They rise, again and again, with deeper intuition, sharper clarity, and a love even more holy for being forged in heartbreak. In the end, the greatest power of Cancer is not just to love, but to know love, to sense its presence before it is spoken, and to sense its absence despite all declarations. This gift makes them vulnerable but also invincible. For the one who cannot be deceived by empty words can never be truly broken. They are the moon's chosen, protectors of emotional truth, warriors of the heart's integrity. And even when the world lies, they remain sacredly aligned with the pulse of the universe that speaks in feelings, not phrases. When Cancer hears "I love you," and yet feels no resonance in the soul, what emerges is not mere doubt, but an ancestral remembrance. a primal wisdom rising from deep within the waters of their sign. This absence of feeling is not simply an emotional void. It is an alarm sounded in the temple of truth. Because Cancer, born under the lunar dominion, does not just want love. They require it to be real, embodied, and eternal. Love must move through them like tide through coral, like moonlight dancing on the surface of their inner sea. When it doesn't, it awakens something ancient and indomitable, a force that cannot be deceived. The Cancerian soul has always carried an echo of the Great Mother, the cosmic womb that gave birth to the universe itself. Love, for them, is not a transaction or a temporary promise. It is sacred. It is ritual. It is the very structure upon which their emotional reality is built. When they feel that love is being offered in word but not in essence, they are not merely disappointed. They are displaced from the frequency of divine alignment. That moment becomes a rite of passage, a spiritual crisis that refines their perception and reshapes their understanding of intimacy. What others might perceive as oversensitivity is in fact a psychic sensitivity, a lunar radar that tunes into the true vibration of emotion. The world often mistakes Cancer's emotional depth for fragility, but the truth is far more complex. Their sensitivity is their compass, and when false love presents itself, their intuition rebels, sounding a siren through every emotional channel. It is not that Cancer cannot love someone who falters. It is that they cannot tether their soul to someone who cannot feel them. The heart of Cancer demands reciprocity not in expression, but in energetic truth. This internal awakening, painful as it may be, becomes a forge of alchemy. Cancer begins to transmute the hollow into the holy. They learn that love without emotional presence is a shadow, and that shadows cannot nourish. And though it may take time, they begin to redirect their sacred energy inward. They remember that their ability to feel what is missing is proof of their own authenticity. It is the mark of an emotional sovereign, one who will not be fed on illusions but insists upon spiritual sustenance. Their retreat, often misunderstood, is never an escape. It is a sacred withdrawal, a return to the oceanic cave within where healing is not passive, but profoundly active. It is in this cocoon that Cancer regenerates, not in isolation, but in communion with their own truth. They speak to the moon, to their ancestors, to the invisible guides that have always walked with them. They rise slowly, not because they are weak, but because they honor the rhythm of their emotional evolution. Each cycle of heartbreak makes them more precise, more discerning, more unshakable in their demand for emotional truth. From this holy retreat, Cancer returns not with bitterness but with radiance. They no longer chase words. They magnetize sincerity. Their boundaries become sacred shields, not walls of fear, but gates of initiation. Those who wish to love Cancer must pass through those gates with reverence, with presence, with soul. Cancer no longer listens for declarations, they feel for devotion. They no longer need proof through speech. They need alignment through action. They become a mirror of the love they wish to receive, and in doing so, they call forth a love that is no longer performative but prophetic. The irony is that when Cancer stops believing in false love, they do not become colder. They become incandescent. Their emotional body becomes a lighthouse, guiding true hearts through the storms of this world toward a shore where love is not promised. It is lived. They become not only the healer, but the oracle, not only the nurturer, but the initiator of truth. They stand as a testament to the fact that those who feel deeply are not doomed to suffer. They are chosen to awaken. So when Cancer hears, "I love you," and the heart does not echo it back, this is not their breaking. It is their rising. It is the moment when they stop being the recipient of conditional love and become the embodiment of unconditional presence. It is when they step into their destiny, not as seekers of validation, but as creators of sanctuary. Their very being becomes the home they always searched for in others. And from that unshakable center, they call in a new era of love. Not borrowed, not spoken, but felt in the soul and honored in the stars. For the journey of Cancer is not merely to receive love. It is to become love's purest form. And in doing so, they teach the world that the heart does not lie, that intuition is divine, and that every "I love you" must be more than words. It must be a vibration, presence, a promise fulfilled not by lips, but by spirit. There is an untold power in the moment when Cancer recognizes the hollowness behind the words meant to move mountains. This moment, often invisible to others, becomes an internal cataclysm, not one of destruction, but of elemental transformation. For a sign born under the moon, emotions are not simply fluctuations. They are tides that shape landscapes, undercurrents that move the tectonic plates of their destiny. When the words "I love you" are spoken without anchoring into truth, without pulsing with soul force, Cancer's inner world does not merely recoil. It reorganizes. That seismic absence of authenticity begins to summon a deeper version of themselves, one forged in lunar fire and the salt of their own oceans. This transformation is not sudden. It unfolds in spirals, just like the lunar phases that guide their essence. In the absence of real emotional resonance, Cancer is gifted with vision, clearer than any logic, sharper than any intellect. They see with the heart. They read the invisible. And when that vision shows them a love that is hollow, Cancer does not fall. They descend. They go inward, not out of cowardice, but to commune with the divine blueprint encoded in their soul. That sacred blueprint is laced with the memory of all the love they have ever given, all the homes they have ever been for others, all the nights they've held space for pain not their own. It is in this place that they remember they are not just the recipient of love. They are the creator of it. The archetype of Cancer is not a passive one. It is the archetype of the primal nurturer, yes, but also the celestial defender of emotional sanctity. In mythology, Cancer was the creature who, though small, dared to interfere in divine battles, not for power but for loyalty. It was crushed, but immortalized in the stars. That myth tells the story of a sign that will sacrifice for love, but also suffer if that love is not true. The pain Cancer endures when feeling emotionally betrayed is not just personal. It echoes in the collective field. They carry within them the emotional memory of generations, the sorrow of the maternal wound, the longing of those who never heard real love behind the words. So when Cancer turns away from false affection, they are breaking ancestral patterns. They are healing not just for themselves but for all who came before. This act of emotional rebellion, of no longer accepting love that does not move them on a soul level, is nothing less than heroic. It is a rejection of illusion, a refusal to participate in the theater of affection when the stage is empty. Cancer becomes the sovereign of their own emotional world, not waiting to be chosen, but choosing themselves in every heartbeat. Their energy begins to attract not just people, but truths, opportunities, and relationships that meet them where they live, in depth, in presence, in authenticity. The world may not immediately understand this shift. Those who offered shallow sentiment may feel rejected, confused, or challenged. But Cancer has stopped translating their worth through the understanding of others. They know now that their emotions are not weakness but wisdom. With this new clarity, Cancer becomes a force. Their intuition evolves from silent knowing into sacred compass. They begin to build their life in alignment with emotional resonance rather than societal expectation. They open their hearts only to those whose energy sings in harmony with their own, and they no longer grieve what does not match their frequency. That grief, once all-consuming, becomes the foundation of strength. The sorrow becomes soil, and from it blooms self-love so radiant that it draws to them a new kind of love, one that arrives not to take, but to co-create. Cancer begins to channel their emotional intensity into purpose. Their sensitivity becomes activism. Their tenderness becomes power. They care still, perhaps even more than before, but now from a place of sovereignty, not sacrifice. They hold others, but they do not lose themselves in the holding. They nurture, but only those who water them in return. Their love becomes fire wrapped in velvet, strength braided with empathy. They teach by example that vulnerability is not the opposite of strength. It is its purest expression. And they remind the world that emotional truth is the highest form of power. The moment Cancer hears false love and refuses to let it anchor in their heart is a moment of ascension. It is the point at which the sign known for retreating into its shell becomes the cosmic guardian of emotional truth. From that place, they no longer seek love to complete them, but to reflect them. They no longer fear solitude, because they have made a home within their own heart. They no longer require rescue, because they have become their own sanctuary. And when real love comes, it will not need to speak loudly. It will hum in harmony with the song of Cancer's soul. It will be silent but undeniable. It will arrive not as performance, but as presence. And Cancer, no longer needing to question or doubt, will open not from fear but from knowing. Because they have learned that love is not a declaration, it is a vibration. And they, governed by the moon and fortified by storm, are the ones who feel the truth before it ever touches the tongue. Cancer's emotional landscape is a place of profound depth, where words like, "I love you," are not just spoken. They are woven into the very fabric of their being. When these words come without the sincerity and emotional truth to back them, Cancer experiences an immediate spiritual dissonance. The essence of Cancer's existence is that they do not just hear love. They must feel it in every fiber of their being. The heart of Cancer is like the ocean, vast, mysterious, and ever-shifting, constantly attuned to the subtle currents of energy that flow beneath the surface. When the energy behind a declaration of love is absent, it is as though the ocean has suddenly become still, unnaturally calm, without the tides to guide its course. In that stillness, Cancer feels lost, disconnected, adrift on waters that no longer support their journey. In this moment of emotional isolation, Cancer does not shrink back in despair. Instead, they retreat into the sanctuary of their own being, searching the depths for the strength to heal themselves. This inner world, though often hidden from the eyes of others, is the birthplace of Cancer's power. They are not simply nurturers of others. They are the keepers of an emotional temple, one that requires the purest, most sincere offerings. They know, deep within their soul, that the love they offer is not meant to be given lightly. It is an elemental force, one that must be earned, one that must resonate with authenticity. The absence of that resonance is not just a betrayal. It is a call to return to their own center, to remember their own worth, and to reconnect with their true essence. The Cancerian path is one of emotional evolution. Each time they encounter this emptiness behind words, they are reminded of their sacred role in the universe. To feel deeply, to experience the world with a heart that is both a sanctuary and a guide. This pain, though excruciating, is not the end of their journey. It is the moment when they realign with the truth of their emotional nature. Cancer's sensitivity is not a weakness to be exploited, but a divine gift that connects them to the spiritual pulse of the universe. When they hear love but do not feel it, Cancer's intuition sharpens. They become more aware of the subtle vibrations of truth and falsehood that move through the world. This awareness becomes their armor, their shield, and their sword in the battle to protect their sacred emotional space. For Cancer, the inability to feel love when it is spoken is not an emotional defeat, but a spiritual awakening. It is a reminder that love is not merely an external force to be received. It is an internal force to be cultivated, a deep well that must be tended with care and reverence. Cancer's journey is not to seek validation from others, but to embody love so fully that it emanates from within, like a radiant beacon that draws only the purest energies into its orbit. They come to understand that love is not about words. It is about presence, about the energy that flows between souls, about the actions that show care and the moments of quiet understanding that transcend language. This journey does not come without cost. Cancer may feel a momentary sense of betrayal, a sting of abandonment, but this is where their true strength begins to take shape. They do not need others to define their worth, because they have learned to define it for themselves. They understand that love is not something to be handed out lightly, nor is it something to be earned through sacrifice or self-neglect. It is something that must be shared with those who can truly feel it, who can reciprocate it, and who can honor its depth. Through this process of awakening, Cancer becomes a master of emotional alchemy. They no longer settle for shallow or superficial expressions of love. They have cultivated the wisdom to recognize the difference between empty words and authentic connection. This awareness transforms them from mere receivers of love into powerful creators of love. They begin to shape their own destiny, drawing to themselves relationships that are rooted in truth and mutual respect. Their love becomes a magnet, attracting those who resonate on the same emotional frequency, those who can meet them in the depths where only the most genuine of souls dwell. As Cancer moves through this process, they embody an extraordinary resilience. They rise not because they have been saved by others, but because they have learned to save themselves. They have learned that the power to create true emotional connection lies within them, and that their love is a force of nature, unstoppable, unbreakable, and eternal. Cancer's strength is not found in their ability to endure betrayal, but in their ability to heal from it, to rise above it, and to continue to love with even greater depth and authenticity. In the end, Cancer's journey is one of profound empowerment. They learn that they do not need to cling to love that does not serve them, for their heart is vast enough to hold space for all the love they need within themselves. They are no longer dependent on the approval or validation of others to know their own worth. They become the embodiment of emotional sovereignty, a beacon of light for others who are on a similar journey of self-discovery and self-love. Cancer teaches the world that love is not something to be given or received in isolation, but something to be shared, a sacred energy that flows between all beings, uniting them in the divine tapestry of the universe. Cancer does not seek love to fill the emptiness within. They seek it to share the fullness of their being. They have become the living proof that love, when it is real, is not bound by time or words. It is felt in the deepest places of the soul and radiates outward, touching all who come into its presence. Through this, Cancer transforms not only themselves, but the world around them, teaching that the truest love is the love that comes from within, and that it is only when we are whole in ourselves that we can truly give and receive love in its most authentic form. There exists within Cancer a sacred memory encoded not only in their soul, but in their blood, ancestral, lunar, infinite. It is the memory of what real love feels like, of love that transcends language, that communicates through presence, energy, and intention. This sign, ruled by the moon, is not built to function in an artificial emotional landscape. Cancer is not interested in performance or pretense. It is aligned with the rhythm of truth, the pulse of authenticity, and the ancient silence in which real love breathes. When Cancer hears the words, "I love you," yet finds no pulse in the space between them, it is not merely personal. It is cosmic dissonance. It is a wound in the spiritual fabric of their world, a rupture that cannot be ignored. This inner rupture becomes a moment of initiation. Cancer, so often associated with softness and protection, reveals another face, one not of gentleness, but of epic courage. For the deepest bravery is not found in conquering others, but in standing firm in the presence of emotional deception, refusing to accept it, and choosing instead to walk alone rather than be held by arms that do not carry real feeling. In doing so, Cancer joins the sacred lineage of emotional warriors, those who wield intuition as shield and empathy as sword. This kind of strength does not roar, it endures. It does not need to be seen, it simply is. The world may misunderstand this quiet resistance, may interpret it as retreat, but in truth, it is reclamation. Cancer reclaims the sanctity of their heart. There is a mystical authority within this sign, often overlooked by those who reduce it to mood swings and sentimentality. But the truth is that Cancer holds one of the most profound archetypal powers of the zodiac, the ability to birth and protect emotional truth. When they are confronted by false declarations of love, they are being called to awaken this dormant power, to become guardians not just of their own heart, but of emotional purity itself. This is not a battle fought externally. It is a deep inner knowing, an unshakable refusal to betray the self by accepting less than what is spiritually aligned. Every time Cancer chooses to listen to the voice of the heart over the seduction of sweet-sounding lies, they are rewriting the script of emotional self-betrayal that has plagued humanity for ages. Their path is not one of cold detachment, but of emotional sovereignty. Cancer does not need to shut down to protect themselves. They need only to remember who they are. They are not meant to navigate love as others do. They are not meant to tolerate relationships that skim the surface. Cancer is the deep sea, the eternal womb, the ancient cave where truth is gestated and reborn. When love is not real, they feel it immediately, not because they are fragile, but because their inner waters are so pure that any contamination is immediately felt. It is not drama, it is divine discernment. This discernment becomes the key to Cancer's transformation. No longer enslaved to the illusion that love must be accepted in any form just to avoid being alone, Cancer begins to value solitude as sacred. They begin to understand that being alone in truth is far more empowering than being accompanied in deception. This is the turning point, the place where emotional dependency is alchemized into emotional freedom. From this place, Cancer does not stop loving. On the contrary, they love even more deeply, but with intention, with boundaries, with honor. Their love becomes not something they offer in desperation, but something they bestow with majesty. In this new form, Cancer becomes magnetic. They draw in people, situations, and relationships that are forged not in fantasy but in emotional resonance. The depth they once feared was too much becomes their greatest gift. The feelings that once made them feel weak become their superpower. They are no longer driven by the need to be accepted. They are led by the calling to embody truth. The ones who come into their life now come not to feed on their emotional generosity, but to contribute to their sacred garden. And Cancer, in their evolved form, becomes the high priest or priestess of that garden, choosing with wisdom who may enter. There is nothing more powerful than a Cancer who has stopped waiting to be emotionally understood and has begun instead to live in full alignment with their own emotional intelligence. The moon is their ruler not just in name but in essence. And the moon does not ask permission to wax and wane, it simply follows its nature. So too, Cancer learns to trust the cycles of their heart. When they feel the absence of real love, they no longer panic. They recognize it as the night before the new moon, the moment of stillness before rebirth. They stop forcing light where there is none, and instead become the light. This rebirth extends into every realm of their life. Cancer becomes a beacon for others who feel deeply but have been told to suppress their sensitivity. They become the emotional leaders, the ones who give others permission to be real. Their very presence becomes a balm for the wounded, not because they sacrifice themselves to heal others, but because they have healed themselves with devotion. They no longer play the role of the martyr. They rise as the oracle, the guardian of the heart's temple, the living embodiment of emotional truth. When Cancer transcends the illusion of surface love, they begin to create a new world. A world where love is not just a word, but a sacred force. They become architects of intimacy that is soul-deep, visionaries of connection that transcends time. In their silence, there is wisdom. In their tears, there is alchemy. In their solitude, there is rebirth. And in their love, there is divinity. They are no longer afraid of not being understood, for they understand themselves. They are no longer afraid of being too much, for they have discovered that they are enough. Cancer does not just survive the pain of false love, they become invincible through it. And from that invincibility, they teach others how to love, not through words, but through energy, through action, through presence. They remind the world that love is not a performance to be perfected. It is a vibration to be lived. And they, ruled by the moon, chosen by the tides, born of the waters that once birthed the stars, are the living testament that emotional truth is not weakness. It is the source of all strength. There is an elemental force within Cancer that defies imitation, a silent current that carries the ancient language of emotion beneath the surface of everyday existence. To live as Cancer is to be born into a sacred contract with the unseen realms of feeling, with the cyclical nature of life, death, rebirth, and the timeless quest for a love that does not fracture under the weight of illusion. When Cancer hears words that claim to be love, yet carry no soul behind them, it is not a fleeting disappointment. It is a betrayal of the natural law they embody. Cancer does not traffic in facades. They are the keepers of the realm where the invisible becomes real, where energy speaks louder than sound, and where the only language that matters is the one spoken heart to heart, spirit to spirit. This betrayal is not merely personal. It strikes at the cosmic role Cancer was born to play. They are not simply receivers of love. They are channels for divine emotion, protectors of the sacred waters that birth empathy, healing, and connection. The lack of resonance behind those hollow declarations forces Cancer into an internal reckoning. one that calls forth their primordial nature. They are not just a sign, they are an archetype born of lunar legacy. The moon teaches them that truth cannot be forced to shine where it does not exist, that shadows are not to be feared but understood, that silence is sometimes the loudest answer. Cancer's epic journey is not just about learning to distinguish real love from falsehood. It is about remembering that they themselves are the source of the love they seek. They are not empty vessels awaiting emotional fulfillment from others. They are oceanic beings with depth immeasurable. Their capacity to feel is not a liability but a supernova. It is the reason they are so often misunderstood, so often projected upon, so often left to carry the emotional weight that others are too afraid to face. Yet this burden, this heaviness, becomes their crucible. It forges them into something that transcends mere humanity. It transforms them into spiritual warriors who love not from a place of naivety, but from a place of radical truth. When Cancer chooses not to believe words that carry no energy, they are declaring allegiance to a deeper order, one that does not bend to emotional manipulation or the seduction of superficial affection. They become a lighthouse not only for themselves but for all who have been gaslit into believing that love must be earned, chased, or tolerated when it comes half-formed. Cancer is here to remind the world that real love does not ask them to shrink, to doubt, to ache in confusion. Real love is a frequency that harmonizes, that soothes, that strengthens, that brings the soul back to its natural rhythm. From an astrological perspective, Cancer holds the gateway to the divine feminine principle in its rawest form, not limited by gender, but by essence. This principle is receptive, intuitive, cyclical, and wise. It does not rush. It waits until it feels. It does not respond to performance. It responds to presence. When Cancer hears, "I love you," and feels emptiness instead of warmth, the divine feminine within them speaks clearly. This is not the frequency of home. This is not the vibration of truth. And so they begin to withdraw, not out of cowardice, but to protect the sacredness of their inner temple. They return to the ocean within, where clarity is not found through thinking, but through feeling, through surrender, through silence. In this sacred withdrawal, Cancer begins to rebuild their sense of self from the inside out. No longer are they the emotional caretaker of those who cannot meet them. No longer do they abandon themselves in the name of being loved. They become the sovereign ruler of their emotional kingdom. The walls of their heart are no longer open to all. They become gates that open only to those who carry the key of realness, the courage to stay, to feel, to reciprocate. Cancer stops offering the sanctuary of their presence to those who only want to rest there without ever contributing to its warmth. This transformation is not loud, but it is tectonic. It shakes the foundation of their relationships, forcing every connection to rise to the level of truth or dissolve into memory. It is not a purge of bitterness, but a purification of intention. Cancer's heart, once given too freely, becomes consecrated. Their love, once offered even when it hurt them, becomes legendary because it is now offered with discernment. The epic of Cancer is not that they loved and were hurt. It is that they rose from that hurt and became more loving, more true, more whole, not because of the pain but in spite of it. Astrologically, their journey mirrors the moon's phases. There are moments of complete illumination and moments of utter darkness. But even in the new moon, when nothing is visible, the moon is still there. It is never gone. It is simply resting, regenerating, preparing to rise again. So too, Cancer learns to honor the times when their heart is hidden, when their emotions retreat into stillness. These are not moments of weakness, but of power. They are sacred pauses where wisdom brews, where wounds alchemize into insight, where tears wash away not dignity, but delusion. In the fullness of their return, Cancer becomes not just a lover, but a guide. They teach others how to love not with words, but with consistency. Not with declarations, but with depth. They show the world that emotions are not meant to be controlled or shamed. They are meant to be honored as the bridge between soul and existence. Cancer becomes a cosmic mother not in the literal sense, but as the embodiment of divine emotional intelligence. They become the ones who feel the storms before they arrive and prepare sacred space for truth to land. They no longer fear being too much, too sensitive, too emotional. They embrace it. They wear it like armor made of starlight and salt water. And from that place, they create love stories that are no longer born of desperation, but of divinely timed resonance. They wait not in passivity but in power, because they now know that when love comes in the right form, they will not have to translate it, earn it, question it, or recover from it. They will feel it, and the moon within them will rise in full, not because someone told them they were loved, but because someone finally spoke in the language they were born to hear. The language of energy, the language of truth, the language of soul. When Cancer hears "I love you" and does not feel it in the blood, in the marrow, in the sacred pulse of their being, it is not only a personal fracture. It is a breach in the covenant they hold with the divine forces of the cosmos. Because Cancer was not placed under the rulership of the moon by accident. They were chosen to embody the most profound truth of the emotional realm, to be both vessel and guardian of the feelings that move the tides of life. Within them is encoded the memory of the womb, the temple, the sanctuary. They remember what the world forgets. That love is not a statement, but an atmosphere. It is not a sound, but a vibration. It is not a promise made, it is a presence felt. The emotional body of Cancer is a sacred landscape, older than time. It is sculpted by lunar cycles, by ancestral longing, by the silent inheritance of intuition that pulses in their chest. When they are told they are loved but the vibration of those words does not echo through their soul, they know something is misaligned. They are not confused. They are not needy. They are not seeking reassurance. They are perceiving, through ancient sensors, that what has been spoken is not in harmony with what is being radiated. This is not imagination. This is emotional clairvoyance. It is the legacy of being lunar-born. It is the strength of being attuned to the invisible laws that govern the emotional truth of all things. This sensitivity is not a wound. It is a weapon, a sacred one. It cuts through illusions. It dismantles performance. It exposes what cannot be sustained in the long term. Cancer knows that words without emotional resonance are echoes in a hollow chamber. They do not nourish. They do not build. They do not protect. And because Cancer's love is never small, never halfway, never artificial, they cannot remain in places where energy does not match language. Their spirit, their intuition, and their emotional memory all conspire to guide them away from that which dishonors the truth of the heart. In these moments, Cancer faces a choice that tests the very core of their path: to stay and silence the self, or to rise and honor what only they can feel. And this is where the epic begins. Because Cancer, when fully awakened, no longer chooses silence. They no longer explain away the dissonance between word and feeling. They no longer settle for emotionally sterile comfort. They walk, not away from love, but toward its truest form. They walk not in bitterness, but in sovereignty. They become the embodiment of devotion to inner truth. This journey activates a new octave of Cancer's purpose. It awakens the warrior in the nurturer. It sharpens the edge of their intuition until it becomes impenetrable. They no longer seek connection through need. They become the portal through which authentic connection is invited to exist. Their presence becomes a test of emotional integrity. Their energy demands congruence. They can no longer be lied to, not because they see more, but because they feel more. Their feelings, once dismissed as excess, become revelation. Their inner knowing, once buried under the weight of doubt, becomes gospel. In this state, Cancer begins to redefine what it means to love. They reclaim love from the domain of performance and restore it to the realm of sacred embodiment. They stop trying to interpret meaning from empty gestures and instead wait for the offering of realness. They do not rush. They do not beg. They do not compromise their emotional integrity to keep someone near. They trust the rhythm of their waters. They trust the fullness of their tides. They trust that what is meant to swim alongside them will arrive, not with noise, but with alignment. Cancer learns to love without abandoning themselves. They become the sanctuary they once sought to build in others. And from that sanctuary, they teach without teaching what emotional truth really is. They teach through presence, through stillness, through their refusal to accept love that is not embodied, not rooted, not alive. They teach through the gentleness of their boundaries, through the silence of their departure, through the unwavering loyalty they offer to what is real. Their path is not one of perfection or of always being understood. Their power is not in control, but in surrendering to the intelligence of their own feelings. They no longer fear their emotional intensity. They ride it like the moon rides the sky, knowing that light and darkness are both sacred, that retreat is not weakness, that softness is not fragility, and that love, real love, is never confusing. It is not a maze. It is a mirror. And if the mirror does not reflect truth, Cancer turns away, not out of pride, but because their soul cannot thrive on fiction. Cancer's legacy is not to endure lovelessness, but to show the world what love is. Their sensitivity is their initiation. Their heartbreak is their forge. Their silence is their prophecy. Their emotions are not storms to be calmed. They are oracles to be heard. The pain of hearing "I love you" and not feeling it becomes the catalyst for becoming what they always were. The protectors of emotional divinity, the warriors of sacred connection, the moonlit hearts who do not seek applause, only truth. They do not wither. They bloom differently. They carry oceans in their chests and moons in their bones. And even when their heart has been scorched by insincerity, they rise again, stronger, deeper, wider in soul. Not for the world, not for validation, but because their nature demands it. Because to feel, to know, to love as deeply as they do is not a curse. It is the mark of the divine, and no empty word can ever destroy what the moon herself has anointed.